At This Place in History takes us to Fairfield today. We are with Vermont Historical Society Executive Director Steve Perkins, and we are right in front of Consuelo Northrop Bailey. Who was she?
So Consuelo, who was known as Connie, a little easier to pronounce, was a lot of firsts in Vermont. Now, Vermont has put out some incredible women, politicians, public figures, you name it. She was really one of the first. And so she was the first female lieutenant governor of the state of Vermont, and right around the first in the United States as well. She was the first Vermont woman to be able to practice law in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. And she was also the first female speaker of the Vermont House of Representatives. So many firsts for this remarkable woman. She grew up right here in Fairfield on the family farm, which is across the street from this historic marker. She was doing these things in the early 1920s. So she was born on this farm. Her father said, you know what, I want you to have all of the opportunities that I didn't have because I was stuck doing this, being tied to this farm. And so she went to UVM. She graduated from Boston University School of Law in 1921. This is right around the same time that women get the right to vote. And she immediately runs for state senate, and she represents Chittenden County in the Vermont State Senate. She then becomes a secretary to Ernest Gibson, who was a congressman, and goes down to Washington, D.C., and that's when she's able to practice in front of the United States Supreme Court. Comes back here to Vermont and says, I'm not done yet. So she comes back to Vermont. She establishes her own law practice in Burlington, meets her husband, gets married, practices in Burlington, but I think really had this political bug. So they were living in South Burlington, represents South Burlington in the House of Representatives, and says, you know what? I'm going to run for Speaker of the House. And this is how she operates. So she goes and she visits every single member of the Vermont legislature leading up to that election. Now, this is driving all over the state in 1951 to say these, I need to be the Speaker of the House. And huge historic win that she becomes Speaker of the House. I mean, these times in Vermont were still very conservative. The Republican Party, of which she was a member, dominated politics. There wasn't really a Democratic Party to speak of. And so she had to convince all of these folks that she was the right one to lead them. But she used that speakership as a springboard to running for lieutenant governor. At the time, all the politicians were saying, you know, she's teeing up. She's going to be Vermont's first female governor. Running into the 1956 election for governor, she decided not to run. Her husband was not doing well, and she just felt like there was still a lot of animosity towards women in politics, and it wasn't the right time for a female governor. So unfortunately, she decided not to run. She ended up representing Vermont in the National Republican Committee until 1973, and was very active in Republican politics. Wrote an incredible autobiography that was published posthumously in 1976. Real groundbreaking lady. To honor her, the state of Vermont retired her desk that she used when she was a legislator and Speaker of the House, and that desk now resides at the Vermont Historical Society.
You can go check that out. And you can check out the historical marker right here in Fairfield, right outside the library at This Place in History.